So I'm here with Donna Howell-Sickles, who I've known your work probably as long as anybody that I followed in Western art. So, which is interesting. I mean, you're an iconic, your women and the imagery you do has had an iconic place in Western art. And I'll even say that I was at a lecture last night at the TMA, Tucson Museum of Art, and they're starting off slide for lecture, which was something completely different, but it was one of your paintings.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I was like, oh, there's Donna. I mean, that's the thing,
Yeah,
right?
well, that,
You're very recognizable, which is, I think, I harp on this to artists to find that voice, whatever that is, not to chase other things, but to find your voice. And clearly you found your voice.
yeah, I think it didn't feel like I was searching for anything. That just seemed to be how I drew. But it's been a good thing. It's gotten me, like you said, it's a recognizable style, and I'm not really sure where that came from, but it was just the way I approach things. I love the line more than I like all the shading.
Mm.
So it's the shape and the composition and the drafting that I really, really like.
Mhm. Which is important. I mean, as we were talking about before we started this, that's everything, right? The draft
Oh,
is
yeah,
everything.
I don't know how you do art without drawing, but many people do. But to me, that's inconceivable. I mean, if Vine charcoal vanished tomorrow, I wouldn't know what to do next.
Well, and we're doing a drawing show, which you're a part of, just Masters of Drawing, and that's the whole concept of the show is just what you just said. How can you, really do your craft if you can't draw?
Yeah. I mean, it's done. I mean, there are a lot of people who do not draw and still make great art.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. And there's lots of artists that draw primarily on their canvas. So it's not
Right.
like they have like a little teeny drawing or a big drawing, and they do it on their canvas. And it's so fun to watch. Like John Moyers, who can draw as much as he wants. I mean, he's great. He's great at draftsman, but he draws on his canvas. He draws it all out, and
Hmm.
and so it's fun to see that process. And it'll be interesting to learn how you do yours as well. I think one of the things I would love to see is how the different artists approach their method, right? And I'm sure you have a very specific approach for all your pieces.
Yeah, there's a commonality. I kind of just think about the layout first. If I've got a model and where I want her to be on the page, and then her torso shape probably is what I have to get right, and then her face before I can go on. I get the layout, the way she's standing, the curve of her back, and then I kind of figure out what's going to be going on with her hands and her feet and her legs, and then I have to get a face that I want to talk to for the next couple of weeks.
And
Then
so,
I can go on.
and so do you always use models for your image?
No, I less than half the time. I take photographs of women, and then I do have people come to the studio, but it's getting more and more infrequent. I've unfortunately or fortunately memorized so many people over the years that they just kind of pop in and out of my head.
Mm,
So if I don't have a model around, or I don't have a pose, sometimes I just make the whole thing up.
mm. I can see that.
It works up to a point, but real life has so many better, more interesting, more enticing detail.
Mm,
And the way to get a great drawing is that balance between what detail do you put in and what do you leave out?
right. Do you
Because you
dream
could
of
go forever.
do you dream of those faces, by the way? I'm just curious.
Not necessarily the faces. I dream of more of the context of the paintings or the drawings. And then I pick a face that matches.
Mm. So you're a very visual person, obviously.
Oh, almost exclusively.
I would think. Yeah. But, because a lot of people can't do what you just described. They can't just visualize a face. You'd be surprised how many people cannot visualize a face, especially one that might not even be, maybe it's just out of your mind, Maybe it's not that person. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a combination over time.
Photographs help. They kind of give you a shortcut because you've got it right there in front of you to compare, this eye match that eye, that kind of stuff. And when you're making it up, I kind of have to do the whole thing, just quickly do the whole thing and then step back and go, okay, do the proportions work? Is that how I want her to? Because everything you change influences the mood of the piece.
Mm.
And if you want a very engaged person in your work, then the eyes have to be engaged. And I found that if the bottom of the eye is a little more flat rather than round, then they look more engaged and more interesting. So they're just little things you got to step back and go, is this a passive piece? Do I want a passive face? Is this curious? Is she, what's going on here? What kind of a face do I need? So it's actually tons of fun. And sometimes I'll get something on the drawing that wasn't quite what I thought I wanted, but it's perfect. So I like the little vagaries are what make it interesting.
And it is those faces, I think about it in the eyes, especially, I hadn't really not contemplated it, but those eyes do really follow you, or there's something about them. And maybe that's what's so compelling about your pieces. Do you think that's possible?
Well, we're certainly drawn to looking at the eyes. You can just look around nature. There are butterflies that camouflage themselves as bigger beings by having those eyes on. So the first thing you look at when you look at that piece is going to be the eyes.
Yeah.
So sure.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Portrait imagery is not what I guess I've been completely known for. I have some artists that obviously are very good and I do it, but do you do other pieces besides, I so think of you with your women on horses and that kind of thing, but do you do other imagery as well, like men or landscape?
I draw a couple of guys every year. It's just inside this world, this context of the Western person. The men's story has been told so many times, so well by so many people. I'm not sure I have anything to add there.
Yeah.
But the women's story in the West, and I did grow up on a farming ranching operation, and the women are completely and totally immersed in that, and they're there by choice. And that's what I'm depicting.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I can hear your Texas accent. So no, that's good. My mom's Texan. So no, it's clear that you are a native Texan, not just a Texas accent, but you're native. So where are you from exactly?
North Central Texas. If you visualize the Texas map, I'm right above Dallas up on the Red River.
Oh, that's a beautiful area.
Now it is a very pretty area. The window in the farmhouse I grew up in, my bedroom window upstairs, I could see, the only lights I could see were in Oklahoma. So really close to the river.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. And that's where you grew up?
It is.
And what did your folks do? What were they? Were they ranchers?
Yes, farming and ranching. In the 50s, there was a really bad drought in Texas, and my folks decided it was time to get another profession. So they weren't planning on selling the place, but they both went back to college and got their teaching certificates. And so when I was going into the sixth grade, maybe middle school, whatever that was in that school system, they did interviews all one summer and drove all over the place. And at that time, this would have been 59 or 60, maybe.
Yeah.
New Mexico's pay scale was higher than Texas.
Yes.
So they took a job in Lovington, New Mexico, which is about as close to Texas as you can get.
Well, I know where it is. It's close to where I grew up.
Yeah, Roswell.
Portales, but close enough.
Oh, Portales. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, wow, you're very close to Lovington.
Yeah, so they took a job in Lovington, New Mexico?
They did, and so we did the back and forth thing. Every holiday and every summer, we came back to Texas to take care of the ranch. And then back to the school year, we went back to New Mexico.
And was that a family ranch? Was that your dad's or your grandfather's? Or
it was, yeah, his dad and his grandmother purchased it. And he added to it a little bit. And then, and my brother has it now.
And does he ranch it?
Yes.
That's good. Okay. So that's a happy ending. That usually doesn't happen anymore.
Oh, I know. I know.
I mean, that's a whatever 3-generation ranch, because I'm sure that was very difficult for your parents, that decision to, we're not making it farming or ranching or both. And we've got kids and we need to make a living, but we don't want to give up the ranch. So
Right.
to go back and go, I'm going to be a school teacher. And when did they embrace it, enjoy it? Or was it still, I wish we were back
Honestly,
on
I
the
think
ranch?
I think they truly enjoyed teaching. Dad taught middle school history and social studies.
Mhm.
So even though I'm a Texan, I really never had Texas history. I only had New
You had-
Mexico history. It's kind of funny.
Oh,
But
fair,
yeah,
New
he loved, and
Mexico.
he liked.
Can you sing "Oh Fair New Mexico"?
No, I can't any longer do that. But I don't know the Texas state song either. So
Yeah.
there you go.
And so,
Daddy enjoyed middle school kids, so he really loved what he did. And Mom was just a pretty exceptional reading teacher.
oh, that's cool.
Mother, I think, enjoyed teaching more than Dad because she retired. Daddy retired once, and Mom retired like 4 times.
Mm. So she would
She'd
just
retire and then
keep
she'd go,
moving.
no, I need to go back.
Uh-huh. And you graduated from Lovington?
I did.
That's interesting. And so were you interested, I assume, in art when you were a kid? And if so, how early?
Yes, I always drew. My background, the rural school that I attended had 2 classrooms and 2 teachers and 8 grades. So it was called the big room and the little room. So Miss Poff, one married couple taught both rooms. So when I was in the little room, I would illustrate people's book reports for them. If they needed a sailing ship on the front of their folder, I would draw them a sailing ship on the front of their. So but it was always a mixed message because nobody saw any real value in being able to draw.
Yeah.
So it was like
Football,
kind of
yes.
wasting time.
If you could play football, they definitely saw something value there, right?
Wrong sex, so I couldn't do that either. Yeah, so it was a mixed message. I remember clearly, this is my first art memory. In 1st grade, when you have one teacher and 4 classes in the same room, then they leave you on your own a lot. They give you something to do and then they walk off. And we had 4 kids in my 1st grade class, and one of them was a cousin. So she gave us these mimeographed things. I can still remember how those smell.
Yeah.
And told us to color a bluebird and then practice writing the word blue under it.
Yeah.
So I did, but I just couldn't make myself color the whole thing blue. So I sat there for a long time, and I finally got out the other colors and made its beak and its eyes and its chest and its feet the real color. And I thought as I was doing it, I was 100% positive I was going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
100% positive. And then she comes back, and all of the other people at my desk had done exactly what she said, and they all had total bluebirds,
Right.
followed by the word blue a zillion times. And I had a bluebird with yellow feet and a beak, and she picked mine up and said, "This is what you guys should have been doing." And I looked at her like, that is not what you told them to do. It was a little bit of didn't quite know what to think about that, but that's my first art memory.
Well, it was a positive influence that she picked your piece, though, right? And said, this is what's right, and you went ahead and did it, even though you thought you were going to get in trouble. I mean, it made such an impact that you still remember it.
Oh, yeah. Because I didn't get in trouble. And then she confused me by saying that was what she'd asked. So, yeah, I remembered it.
And so you continued to draw in high school?
High school, Lovington High did not have an art teacher.
Yeah, sounds like my
So the answer is no, I did not. I filled pages and pages of paper notebooks with doodles, but when I should have been taking notes, but I didn't really have an art class. And then when I went to tech, I majored in elementary education. I came from a fairly unexposed background, so I'm not sure I knew anything else was out there.
Sure.
And I faint at the sight of blood practically. So I knew I wasn't going to be a nurse. And I'm so dyslexic with numbers and letters, I knew I couldn't be a secretary. So I was like, okay, teacher. And my parents loved it. So I figured I'd be good at it.
And that's the thing. I don't think people realize that in this time frame when you're going to college or trying to get an advanced degree, there's not a lot of lanes available for women.
Right.
I mean, you have teaching.
There were
nursing,
more, I
know.
just didn't know about them.
Yeah. And so what, and you
Anyway.
went to Tech, right? Texas Tech at
I
Lubbock.
did. I went to tech. And then when I was a junior, I took an art class required for my major.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an eye-opening light bulb moment.
Mhm.
I was in the art department and I was around people who were like me,
Yeah.
literally for the first time in my life.
Wow.
I was like, oh my, I can see me doing this for the rest of my life. And I knew I could do it. And talk about zero encouragement.
From whom?
But the first,
Zero
I changed my major.
Zero encouragement from whom? School?
Yeah. Well, it was just kind of all the way around. My folks were not keen on this idea, but I changed my major the next semester and didn't tell my folks until after the ad drop date because they were so incredibly frugal that I knew they wouldn't waste that money.
Right.
And I'd get at least one semester of drawing and painting.
Right.
So, and they were just horrified that I was going to do that. And mother was always really good with words. And her comment was, you are headed for a life of poverty and depravity, not necessarily in that order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they're Depression era babies, right?
Yeah.
They almost lost the farm once, had to find the most stable job that they could, that they thought in their mind was teaching.
Yeah.
Wanted that for you because they didn't want you
Absolutely
to do just what that is. But that makes it very hard for you to go, I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, that hard-headed little kid I told you about with the bluebird, she still lived in there. So it was pretty easy to ignore them. Listen and then ignore.
And so you made this switch. You go, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm not even going to tell them I'm going to do it because I want to make sure I get at least some training. And how did it progress from there?
Oh, I absolutely loved everything that I did. And this is late, when would this be? Late 60s, early 70s.
So it's also the Vietnam War is going on too.
It was, yes. Many people were in college so they wouldn't be in that war. Yes. And it was a big deal when I was in high school. I graduated in 67. So it was a lot of people were going.
Yeah, especially.
In fact, everybody you graduate with had to deal with that.
Yes. And how did you think that affected you in some way as well? Just the way you see the world?
I am really not sure exactly what effect it had. I was certainly aware of it, and I was aware of the danger and the unpredictability of it. One of my cousins came back a different person. So it was, I was aware of the danger. I was aware of the political unrest, all of those things that are going on. There were marches down Broadway at Lubbock, Texas, anti-war stuff. And, inside the context of my family, my dad called and said, if I ever see a photograph of you in the newspaper marching, that's the last dime you're going to get for your education. So it was all kinds of drama surrounded the issue.
Yeah, it broke families up, and it changed the way our generation, I think, sees things to some extent.
Oh, undoubtedly it did. And then it was such an unpopular war, and the people that left, it was like everybody blamed them for having gone. They had no choice. And they came back so health-wise compromised, many of them. And even now, Vietnam vets are dealing with horrible things.
Yes. And in Texas, and Eastern New Mexico. LBJ is the president at that time. And so there's a rally around him just from being, you know, Texan. I would assume it wasn't my family, I think to some extent.
Right.
Yes. So
It was a tough time. It was a changing time. It was actually quite exciting. There were just all these conversations going around in moral debates. And I mean, you could sit in a coffee house and, you know, on cushions and think you were so totally hip and talk about how to make the world a better place. It was an exciting time as well as a traumatic time.
yes, that's right. And you're in the art department, no less.
It
So
was.
yeah, so that also gears it a little differently, I think.
There weren't that many cowboys in the art department.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Well, and the men probably that were in that too are very creative beings. And this other component of going to war does not fit that kind of construct, I would assume. My brother was a musician and I knew he wouldn't do well if he had to go.
I missed that last little bit because my air conditioner just clicked on.
Yeah,
So sorry about that.
I said my brother was a musician, so I knew if he had
yes.
gone, he wouldn't have lasted very long. He was not capable of that.
Right now, did you go?
No, I was too young. So
Oh, okay.
I'm old, I'm younger than you, but I saw it firsthand through the eyes of my sister and brother. So
Okay.
they were of that age. So it was very, you know, like you said, it was around the family table. What's going to happen, right? You know, your father.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you in a photograph of in the newspaper, or you know, you can forget your art career. So a lot of pressure on a teenager to go. You've got to do this, or you're, you know, you're out of your dream. So, but clearly you focused in. Yeah, I could see it in your eyes.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough, but it was, hey, I made it. I'm still here. I'm still doing what that teenager decided she wanted to do with her life.
That's right. So you graduate in in what year and with what degree?
A BFA in painting and drawing.
Nice, nice. And that
And
would
then
have,
my minor is education. But
was that, what year was that that you graduated?
well, it's a little conflicted. I left in 70, but my diploma says 72 because I left with an incomplete class, and then I sent him, I guess I sent him slides to
Yeah.
fulfill the requirement.
Yeah. So you get your BFA, and so what are you going to do with that? This is early 70s. Now what?
Go be an artist somewhere.
Yeah,
We moved.
exactly right.
You know, I moved somewhere. I grew up on a farming ranching thing, and in New Mexico and in Lubbock, rain is always a big deal. And
Yes.
so I got married the summer after I graduated, or decided to leave. I didn't technically graduate, and we were trying to pick a location, and we picked Seattle. And one of the things was because I thought, well, you don't have to pray for rain there. That would be a different experience. Had no idea, none, that you could pray for rain to stop. Never crossed my mind.
That's such a rancher, Texas, Eastern New Mexico. You have to pray for rain, you know. I understand that because when, you know, that's the talk around the courthouse, right?
Oh yeah, every day. How much rain did you get?
Yeah, exactly. So you go to Seattle because there's lots of rain, and then
Lots of rain. And the man I married was a potter, and there was a school there where he wanted to go work. So that's what we did. And then I got a part-time job because I didn't want to have an accidental career, and then painted the rest of the time.
I see. And what were you painting at that time?
Actually, the cowgirl stuff started my last semester at Tech. I did two drawings there using the cowgirl figure. And, you know, this is, well, 70. So figurative artwork was not totally popular at that time.
Right.
And one of my professors actually said that as a woman, I was going to have a hard time in the art world anyway. As a woman in the Western art world, there was no way I was going to make it.
Wow.
hard-headed kid kicked in again and decided, not going to listen to that.
Right.
So I had already started doing the drawings of the women by that time. And it all started because I had found a postcard at a thrift shop in Lubbock.
Yeah.
A photograph that was taken, I found out later, in about 1949 and then colorized in the 50s sometime. So it was a woman sitting on the back of a horse, and because it had been colorized, it was kind of monumental. All the edges had been smoothed.
Mhm.
And the color register was a little bit off, like her bright red lips were like right there instead of being right on the photo of the lips. And the caption was, "Greetings from a real cowgirl from the old Southwest." And I was immediately taken by the fact that I, having grown up in the old Southwest, I never saw anybody that looked like that, not even almost. But there was such an appeal to that image.
Yes.
And it might have been because of the Westerns that we saw on TV or Annie Oakley or who knows who, but we played cowboys and cowgirls all the time when I was a kid. And, you know, I somehow felt like I had been that red-lipped heroine that had saved the world a couple of times already. So the image, even though I had no real connection with it, and when I saw it, I assumed it was completely and 100% envisioned by a writer. And then as I explored the imagery a little bit further, I mean, I really thought it was created for TV, but the cowgirl image has been so popular. It has been used to sell everything from soap to sex since the mid 1800s. So it's just somehow our American psyche likes that heroine, likes the idea that there is competence and daring and courage and laughter inside a Western woman.
Yeah, look at Annie Oakley, right? I mean, she's
Yeah.
iconic imagery of that kind of success and toughness and, you know, what we think of, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't define, I still can't define exactly why she's so compelling, but she is.
Yeah. And she was a world star, right? I mean,
Oh my
everybody knew
gosh,
who
yes.
she was,
Those
right?
Wild West shows that used to tour the country, sometimes when they rolled into town in Rome or Paris or New York City, 80% of the newspaper press would be about the daring women.
Yeah. So you see this postcard in Lubbock and do you buy it? I take it?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
You're
You
probably
know,
like 20 years old or something like this.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit afraid. It had a note on the back that I do not remember. And I do not have that postcard because when you stumble over something that's going to inform your life for the rest of your life or your
Right.
work for the rest of your life, you don't recognize it. So I
Yeah.
had to go
Very
find
hard.
other postcards.
Yeah. Very hard to do that, to recognize it at that moment. But something clicked clearly.
Yeah.
And you actually did some women imagery at that time. That was kind of the first time, and you're still in college.
Right.
And so now you're in Seattle, you're working, and what are you doing exactly? I know your husband's a
A
potter.
job?
Yeah.
My job was I drove a special ed school bus for the Seattle ISD. And because I passed the test because I'd driven hay trucks. So I could back a bus anywhere.
That's so awesome.
So yeah, drove a special ed school bus in the city of Seattle. And it was a split shift. So you had that time in the middle of the day you could go work.
Right. And you're painting when you had the off time?
I did. Yeah, I actually did that. And I had to join the Teamsters Union to get the job, which was so strange to me coming from a liberal arts school and then
Right.
realizing that to get a job, I was going to have to join the Teamsters. Okay.
And
There
so
you go.
were you looking for galleries at that point, trying to find a place for
Yeah,
that?
you know, the business end of the arts was totally ignored when
Yes.
I was in college. I graduated from college having never been into a gallery. Never.
Yeah.
Seattle had wonderful galleries, but I never showed anybody my work ever. And then we moved out of Seattle into a rural community. east of there, and it had a co-op gallery of a lot of locals, and I did show in that.
And so you start showing in that, and do you find that people are starting to go, oh, this is interesting, and buy your work? Things starting to sell?
I sold a couple of pieces in college. They were the big color field pieces or the other figurative work, but I had not sold any of the cowgirls. And I think my memory is so faulty about that. Yes, I think I did sell one painting of a
Hmm.
cowgirl back then.
And so how did you proceed in your art career? So you're living in a rural community, which is hard to sell art. You're presumably doing some other job too at this time to make a living. Your husband is the ceramicist, which is not generally a lucrative job either.
No, you got that right. Yeah, I worked as the person that made the plates in a print shop. I don't
Okay, so
remember
you're
now what
around
those.
art at
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a creative process. I actually kind of enjoyed it, except for the chemical smells.
Yeah.
And then, that marriage didn't last a whole lot longer than that. And I got a job with the Washington State Arts Commission as a visiting artist in the schools. So I
Oh.
traveled all over Washington State to rural schools. I was at a different school each week.
Hmm.
And I came up with a little program that just introduced a line shape, composition, color, and a lot of little kids had never mixed red and blue together. And so when you let them do that in that glass of water as they're washing off their brush and they get purple, it's
Yeah.
like the angels sing.
Yeah.
It's just a magic moment.
Yeah, I would think you would really love that kind of job, just
I
to,
enjoyed it.
yeah, I could
I
see.
enjoyed it tremendously.
So you're working at this uh in Washington, going around to the rural schools.
Yes.
You're still making your art?
It was harder because an unforeseen side effect of that is that you're exposed to a different group of germs every week.
Hmm.
So I had a cold every weekend.
Hmm.
I got a little bit done. I took a lot of photographs, reference photographs, and I thought a lot about what I was going to do next. And eventually, after 2 years of doing that, I decided I missed Texas. I didn't really miss Texas per se. I missed the landscape. Around the Seattle area where I was, you couldn't get a deep, long horizon unless it was over water.
Hmm.
And I missed the horizon line. I missed sunsets and sunrises that you could actually see from the ground up. And
Yeah.
I missed other colors other than green. I mean, there were so many gorgeous greens in that area, but I hardly ever use green in my work. So
Yeah. Orange
eventually
and
I was
blue.
kind of like, I need
Yeah.
more. I need more space. And the overcast in that area is quite low sometimes. So, and long. And here, even if it's overcast, the sky is still way up there. It's
Hmm.
not at the top of the building.
Yeah. So you made this choice to go back to Texas. How old are you at that time when you go back?
27.
Yeah. Okay. So you know what you want to do at that point. And so where do you land in Texas?
Well, my parents are still doing the teaching thing. So my brother has started doing the ranching stuff by then. So I just moved back into our childhood house until I figured it out. And I, did plowing, farm stuff.
Yeah.
And I also went back to school. I had totally enjoyed teaching. So I thought, well, I might as well go ahead and finish that teaching certificate
Right.
in art education and just see where that goes. And so I did everything except student teaching for that at North Texas. And then I met a guy, and it was the right guy this time.
Mm.
So I didn't finish that student teaching, and he was very supportive of my artwork,
Mm.
John Sickles. And so I just started painting in the buggy house of his home, where he had an old farmstead outside Dallas that he was restoring. And we turned the buggy house into my studio, and it was kind of up and running. So this would have been, by this time, it would have been 80, I guess. And we had a daughter in 81. And by 85, as shocking as it was, everything was moving forward for me. I had gotten a gallery in Dallas, and they had advertised. And from that advertisement, I got a gallery in Sun Valley, Idaho, the Neeland Gallery, which is still there. Lovely people, absolutely adored them. And then a gallery in Taos, Ed Morgan Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed was a friend of John's. John worked in the advertising world in Dallas. And so John knew Ed from that background. And then with those 3 galleries, the Dallas gallery, I've never sold that well in Texas. I sell to a lot of Texans,
Right.
but they like it to be validated in Arizona and New Mexico first.
Yeah, I understand.
That's probably not true now,
I don't
but
know
it
if
was.
that is. I think it's still, they all want to go to Santa Fe.
Yeah. Yeah, you can imagine the shock when they bought a piece in Taos and realized that they lived 50 miles from where I lived, but there you go.
And was this the women cowgirls kind of imagery?
Yes, this was exclusively women. They were a little different at the beginning. They were sometimes without eyes, usually smiling, but they had very limited features. And there was a turning point when I was doing research about this figure. And this would have been about the same timeline, about the early 80s, 83, 84. And I realized how many women actually existed in the Wild West shows and other areas that influenced this image, and that they were real.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that there actually were women, this was not a totally invented thing, and started to get to know some of them, I realized that they needed to have faces. I needed to show companionship and friendship and all kinds of things. And I needed faces for that. They were no longer just a static image of a partially remembered past. These became actual women to me. So they needed to have features, and they needed to express emotion for each other and for their viewer and their critters.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, about the same time, found another missing part of my meaning from my work, and that was a lot of mythologies come from agrarian cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So you have myths about, say, Diana with her dogs and the deer. Well, you have all of those things in the American West. So to marry Greek ideas or Roman ideas or Celtic ideas with this Western figure and throw in the bull, and instead of having it just be, really good breeding stock, you've got the concept of the female being the creative, the female yin yang. That's what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Male and female creative spirits for the planet, frequently shorthanded into a bull in mythologies. And then so the woman and the bull could suddenly have other meanings. And I don't know, it was just a treasure bag of ideas. I was
no one's doing
this
either, right? I mean, there's nobody really doing anything like this imagery wise, as far as women, cowgirls, things like that, mixed in with mythology.
No, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
It's such rich ideas. I'm kind of surprised, but
again,
yay, I get to do it.
That's what makes you a trailblazer, because no one was doing that I know of. It's, the only person I can even think of who does that kind of imagery early on was Terry Kelly Moyers, who would do cowgirls and things like that.
Yeah, and Bill Shank and Ann Coe were also doing similar to that.
Yeah, and Bill did too, but I'm thinking of more on the women artists that were really
right. Well, Ann did a lot.
She did, yeah, absolutely. Early on, yeah, for sure. And so now you start coming onto the scene pretty everywhere. I mean, and it has to do with your lithographs and posters and things like that, right? I mean, I remember seeing, wow, they're everywhere. So maybe, right? I mean, that's not a bad thing. It is a thing. I mean, there's a renaissance
part of why people think they've seen my work everywhere is because my style is easy to remember.
It is. No, I agree. That's exactly right. And that's when you see it, you go, oh yeah, I know that. It's not like, oh, there's bunches of people doing it. It's you have a very unique style. And so how did you start? Because right now that's come back in vogue. You know, people like Mark Maggiore and others are doing lots of lithographs and prints and different things. And how did you come upon and going, this is something, another way I can get my artwork out there and also succeed from a business standpoint? Because let's face it, art is a business and you have to make money to be able to do what you want to do.
It is. And back in the 80s, all the way through the early 90s, prints were a more viable art form, fine art prints. Now the word print has been so diluted with so many different kinds of ways to print an image or reproduce an image. Etchings, I did etchings, I did lithographs, I did monotypes. I did a lot of monotypes,
Yeah.
which are still fiercely hard to explain.
Yeah. Yeah, they're one of
And-
ones.
What?
They're one of ones.
Oh, yeah. They're called a
works of art.
print, but they're original one of one. Yes.
Oh, that's right.
And then I did Greenwich Workshop, did 3 images in that format.
Hmm.
So there were editions of like 650. And that was such a huge element back then of many people's careers.
Yeah.
And then after that, and then when the giclées came out, you know, all of a sudden you go back and there are no really cool people doing lithographs. There are, but you don't hear that much about it. And it's not a part of many artists' repertoire. It takes so long to do that.
Mhm.
The audience is confused already. And it doesn't take long at all to take an image you've already done and make a giclée.
Right.
So from the numbers end, even as an artist, if a litho would be a commitment of time and love.
And you were mainly doing lithographs primarily?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't do that many lithographs, 4, I think, but they sold very well. And I'm sure I've seen maybe one of them. And then the etchings didn't sell so well, but that's just the nature of etchings. But I love that black, that warm black of etching ink is just something you can't get anywhere else.
Well, and as this, and I'm going to use the word fame because I think it's appropriate, as this fame starts to hit you, because now you're associated with this imagery, kind of a new field, a new type of composition, and people know who you are. And that's a different thing. I mean, I think pretty much everybody knows who you are now. You know, no, I think that's a true statement. Yeah, at least I do. And it feels that way to me. Maybe it's because of when I came into the art world and saw the thing and started paying attention. But how did that affect you as an artist going, wow, this is,
Oh,
you know?
made me super busy.
Yeah.
I spent 12 hours a day in the studio for many, many years. When our daughter was little, I would get up at 4 and go out and work in the studio till she got up. And back then there were no distractions. You couldn't answer your emails. You couldn't, not even your mom's going to call you at 4 in the morning. So it was just you and your studio.
Hmm.
So it was a good way to get a lot of work done. And then you can do the family the rest of the day. So yeah, I was busy for a long time and I absolutely loved it. It was fascinating to me that this talent you're born with and these ideas that sort of bop around inside your head and make you not quite normal were things that other people identified with that could support you.
Was it an odd feeling to know, for people to be able to come up and know exactly who you are and what it is that you paint and that kind of thing? Because you have
It's still an odd feeling. I am innately pretty shy. So the fact that people know so much about me and come up and ask if I still have my cat Oreo is really kind of a weird thing.
And do you still have your cat Oreo?
No, I don't. Oreo would be 40 by now.
So yeah, so that came on you, all that attention, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And were you showing what you were still showing in those same galleries, or did you add new galleries at this point?
Oh gosh, no, I added 2. Let's see, I was still with Neeland and I moved from Taos down to Santa Fe, Contemporary Southwest.
Yeah.
On Palace showed my work. And I had actually, that was when everybody wanted to be in the Horwich galleries. And I was showing instead with Suzanne Brown in
Yes.
Scottsdale.
Yes. Also an excellent gallery. Who showed
It
Ed?
was,
Yeah.
it
she
was a
showed
good
Ed
gallery.
Brown.
It worked really well for me.
Yeah.
So I was in Scottsdale and Santa Fe and Neyland Gallery. And then there was a gallery in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which was one of my best galleries for a decade probably, Martin Harris.
Mhm.
And so it was those 4 galleries that kept me busy. I didn't have time for anything else.
Mm. And so this was primarily through you really start delving in this in a serious fashion about 1985, and then this brings me up to the late 90s kind of time frame.
Yes, exactly. Maybe 2002-ish. I'm not sure. That was kind of what it was. And then as it does periodically, the world changes. So, and we moved to a little town called St. Joe, Texas in December of 2000. We bought a ranch outside of town and bought some buildings on the downtown square that were derelict and restored those and lived in a loft apartment in downtown. Our daughter had left for college and, she accused us of moving away and selling her home while she was gone. And well, she's right, we did. But we did tell her where we were going.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I changed. I had a new studio, which influenced things because the old studio, you no longer thought about the studio. It worked there.
Mhm.
And when you have a new studio, you're like, okay, this doesn't feel right. I need to move the easel over here. This light's not right. I've got to change that. And I was in a building on the downtown square that was just a basic cinder block building that used to be a White's Auto store. And its lack of beauty was killing my soul. So we bought the old Presbyterian church, which was no longer being used as a worship place, and turned that into my studio. It's a small 1-room building with a couple of little bump outs on the side, pretty stained glass, really high ceilings, pressed tin, and it was painted yellow, and you couldn't tell what color was what in there. So I had to fix the color, but that's about all I changed.
Yeah, that would be
And it was
interesting.
great.
Yeah, to have that, a place of worship that you're actually in, just the energy that I would think would still kind of be around in that
The
place.
most peaceful place. Everybody commented on how peaceful that place felt.
Yes.
And so it was fun. I took it from one sanctuary to my sanctuary.
Right.
So it worked really well. And then we decided St. Joe needed somebody. Everybody was talking about starting something and doing something on the square because it's a charming square. And nobody was doing it. And there were vineyards that were being planted out in the valley, which is about 8 miles out on the Red River. And we're an hour and a half from Dallas, Fort Worth. So there's no reason it couldn't have an economic future.
Right.
It's close enough to be a one-day getaway or a weekend getaway. And so John and I decided that we had to make some sort of statement of faith. So we started restoring the building we were living in as a retail space. And when we started that, then 3 other restorations, Tom started the hotel and Jack started the restaurant. So it was kind of a group effort. It wasn't one person that started a restoration project here. And then there were 3 vineyards that were planted in the one tasting room open at that time. So, and there was a restaurant that was actually quite popular that was out in the county, a rustic pizza place with a big oven. So people were coming through to go out to that destination restaurant. So it was not like it was a foolhardy move. It probably did not make economic sense to do what we did, but we did it anyway. People were saying, put your money where your heart is. So we did. And I think it had a positive influence on the development of the area. And I was just going to put in a gift shop. I figured that would be the easy way to do things. And I went to market in Dallas, which is a huge market. And I wore the wrong shoes and realized I don't know anything about gift shops. So I came home and told John, we're starting a gallery.
Right.
Because that's the only business I know. So it was a smaller building. It was 25 foot wide and 68 foot long. So that was the gallery for 3 years. And we had also purchased the building next door, which was a 2-story, 50 foot wide, 80 foot long building. And it was condemned. So that was a huge pile of work that my husband was not terribly enthusiastic about, but he did a dynamite job. He even got an award from the state of Texas for historic preservation.
And so this gallery you opened, was it your gallery and or you showed other people as well?
I showed other people. I have a lot of friends who are artists and have known many people over the years. So like Steve Kessler, I called and I said, I'm starting a gallery at the end of the world.
Yeah.
Would you like to be a part of that? And Charlie Hunter and Ted Waddell was at the beginning.
Oh,
Yeah.
really good artist.
I had amazingly good art for a gallery that shares the zip code with nowhere. So it worked fairly well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so how did that do? You're talking
It
about
has always
1,000.
almost broken even. And, you know, I have a little bit of Donna Howell-Sickles products, some purses and cards and mugs and things. So they were in the back of in a little gift area.
Right.
And more than, I mean, people would walk in and stop at the door and go, what is this doing here? So it was a little bit of a shock factor, but this is a becoming area on so many levels that I did sell art. I still sell art of other people's as well as my own.
And it's still open.
And it's still open. When we bought the building next door, we moved the fine art gallery there when we finished that restoration.
Right.
So that would be in April of 2013. And then the gift shop sort of grew into a real gift shop in the original location. By then I figured out how to navigate market. You just buy what you like and don't worry about the rest of it.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's exactly right. And what's the name of the gallery?
Davis and Blevins Gallery.
And why Davis and Blevins?
It was the name that was on the business when the building next door that we bought first was built. It was Davis and Blevins Hardware. So that was the earliest photograph I could find of the building. And I didn't want to call it Howell-Sickles because that limits it in your mind to what kind of image is in there.
No, that's right. It does. That's exactly right.
So it was, so Donna Howell-Sickles shows at Davis and Blevins.
Yeah, that's nice. And so that's been open now for how long?
13 years.
Yeah. And so what's that?
The fine art gallery that expanded into this building has been just open 10 years now.
So
11 years.
Very few artists do that. There's a few that do it, but it's such a hard thing to do. Like William Matthews does it and does it very effectively. And how's that process of being a gallerist as well as an artist?
I think I'm a really good artist. I think I'm kind of a mediocre gallerist because I don't have the time to be really good at it.
Yeah, no, you have to paint. That's right. I mean, you need, and I assume you have to create. I mean, it's part of who you are.
Yeah, I think, yes, COVID proved that to a lot of artists that you do this because you have to.
Yeah.
So yes, I do this because I have to, and I want to. I mean, well, I can't think of anything that would be a better job. I mean, I get to spend my day with paper and color.
Yeah, no, that's pretty
What's
cool
better
job.
than that?
I can't imagine a better job.
Yeah. I'm still, when I opened the gallery, I did have a good director who had been in the art business for a long time and who had recently moved to this area and thought it would be fun. And then she got a job offer back in Santa Fe where she had been before and left me. And I was like, oh no, now what? Because I couldn't find anybody else. I'm still actually looking for that elusive director. I've had two good ones in the time, but they both have had reasons for leaving.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, it's also a small town and
it is.
Yeah, it makes it hard.
Nobody wants to commute from Dallas to St. Joe.
Yeah.
So it's been a struggle. Our daughter has recently left the corporate world and is helping me more with all the electronic stuff and the tech stuff and the idea of newsletters and posting every day. And, I know you should, but I kind of don't want to tell them what I did yesterday or plan to do tomorrow. So I have a resistance to being that daily poster who shares deep insights into the
Yeah,
artist's life.
it's a hard thing, right?
It's really hard.
No, I know. And it's for some artists, it's really painful to do. And you have to, it's a fine line to try to figure out what do I share and how often. I mean, even
Yeah.
for myself, I don't share personal things on my Instagram. I share information and education,
Oh,
you
and
know,
you do a great job at that.
and I'm comfortable with that. But
Yeah.
they don't need to know the other part because I'm just not comfortable with that. I mean, you're going to get enough out of it anyway if you listen to my podcast or whatever. But
And I have, by the way, listened to very many of your podcasts.
yeah,
And it has the unsettling effect of making you feel like walking up and talking to a perfect stranger that you listen to a podcast about because you know about their childhood.
no, it's right. It's a weird thing. I know.
A weird thing.
I feel that way about Mark Maron because I've always listened to his podcast. And I'm sure if I saw him, I'd be like, oh, Mark, how's your cats? Yeah,
Exactly. And you're like, and kind of, I can imagine how they're reacting inside their head. They're trying to go, okay, I posted that. I need to not look shocked.
Yeah. Well, I think for somebody like that, they're just used to it. There's such a, huge out there that, that kind of stuff is just part of their life that they have to deal with. So, but it is hard to decide what to do social media wise. I don't even know if I have great advice for people on that artist wise, but what I do know is that it's an important component of connecting with collectors and things like that.
Yes.
And you can be a very
And I do
effective
know,
just doing art, I think, and not having to show everything.
right. And I found someone to do posting for the business end of what we do, the gift shop and the gallery.
Yeah.
And that's great. She's doing a wonderful job. And then she features everybody. And then I still do my own Instagram about my art, but it's really just about the art and not a lot else.
I think that's fine. I think that's just fine. That's when you, it's a lot safer for sure if you don't have to open your life up to everyone else and their scrutiny. But it is important, and clearly you've managed to run a very successful personal business from the mid 80s to now, and a gallerist for over 13 years now or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah. Most galleries don't make it more than a couple of years, quite honestly. So they either just give up, they don't make it successful, whatever. But you're doing it in a small town,
I am.
making it work. And so how do people find that gallery if they want to go to it, and website?
It has a website. It's Davis and Blevins Gallery. And it also has another one that was when we first started was SJ, like St. Joe, mainstreetgallery.com.
And then you have your own website, right?
And then I have Donna Howell-Sickles.
Yes. And then you have numerous galleries too. And are those galleries?
I do. Oh,
Go ahead.
I show with McClary Fine Art in Santa
Yeah,
Fe
it's a great gallery.
and with Ann Corlogos in Basalt.
Yes.
And at the moment, that's it.
Yeah.
And then I do several museum shows. And those deadlines are making me crazy.
Yeah, you do the Briscoe, right?
I do the Briscoe and the Quest for the West
Yeah.
in Indianapolis
Yes.
at the Idle Jord. And I'm going to do the Coors show next year, which I had
Good.
not done before.
Yeah, the person who's running that,
And
I think Kate, is doing a really good job. I think she's going to do an excellent job with that.
yeah,
So,
she used to work for Altamira, who showed my work for a little while.
yes,
So I know her
yes,
fairly well, and I think she's going to do great.
yes. Yep, she is going to. So what parts of anything have we missed that you want to share with people?
We've had a pretty exhaustive conversation here, so I think
What
we're good.
What would you recommend to artists that are looking to, maybe especially women artists, because I think it's a harder struggle in the Western world for women artists. Would you agree with that statement?
I do agree with that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
Yeah. I can see in your face. Yeah, there's a litany of reasons why.
Yes.
You're welcome to share any of them if you want, but you don't have to.
No, I mean, I've talked about women in the arts since I began, and we have a place there. We create a valid portion of the artwork that's out there to enhance the world's appreciation of beauty, life, and laughter. And the statistics were the same 40 years ago as they are today.
Yeah.
10% of a big show, maybe if you're lucky, in a museum. Less than that if you want to be in somebody's collection in a museum. Galleries are more like 50-50 now, but that's a sales game. And the museum shows have limited space and limited opportunities to ask artists. And most female artists' work is so less expensive than the big guys. So they're going to go for the big guys because they need, the reason they're doing a fundraiser is to raise funds.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a circle that's not changed. We've worn a really deep trench here. So.
And so what would you tell women who are thinking about going into specifically the Western art field,
Just do what you know you can do. I mean, you've got talent. You're making work that appeals to you. You think it's good. You get response that says it's good. Then it belongs in the world. Just keep doing it. You're going to find a place. I can't tell you a magic thing because the art world is so different now than it was when I started. When I started, galleries were the heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And galleries may not be the heartbeat anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's a completely different world that I don't have a lot of advice for since I struggle with Photoshop. So what I can say, the bottom line is, this is something that this shows how country I am. This is something my grandmother used to say when I was worried about something or being good enough. She'd say, honey, cream rises to the top.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So you got to think about that. Yeah, you got to think about that in your artwork. If you do good artwork, there is a place for you.
Yeah, that's a nice way to end it. Yeah, well, you do good artwork for sure, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in February at our Masters of Drawing show.
Oh, thank you. I am so looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a very fun show, and I'm excited to see what you come up with. And I'll see you if I don't see you sooner, I'll see you there.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, Donna Howell-Sickles, thank you very much, and thank you for your contribution to Western art as well.
Oh, my pleasure. Totally.
A real Westerner. All right. We'll see you later. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.